Hey guys, it's Olivie Blake, and this is me not writing. So I've had to lay off the eye makeup a little bit because I've got a the inner eye is a little bit swollen. You probably can't hear anything I'm saying into my coffee. So anyway, let's see, what can I start with? Let's start with happy September. I can't believe it's September already, and this is very troubling, but moving on. This month for S.P.E.L.L. We're doing Big Little Lies. There's a couple of reasons for this. I kind of wanted to do something that was like a domestic thriller. It came down to basically this book or Fates and Furies. The Fates and Furies is a little bit more about a marriage, and I mean, the spoiler, it doesn't have a super happy ending. So I wanted to go with something that was a little bit more satisfying. So we're going with Big Little Lies. It is coincidentally about 3 women. It's about more women than that, but there's 3 main characters. So I figured we'd follow up 3 women with 3 more women. This is a super quick read. I actually own it. I just can't find it, so this is my library copy. Liane Moriarty is really, really great. You know, she writes stories about women, and it's these very domesticated problems, but in a really intriguing setting. Well, really, she takes a boring setting and makes it intriguing, so that's where we're going with Big Little Lies. Anyway, so Liane Moriarty, really good. I recommend, if you haven't read her other stuff, you should read that too. But anyway, Big Little Lies, pretty quick read. And then our October read is going to be very aesthetic. So yeah, just bearing that in mind. I guess there's really no reason to not jump right in. Did you struggle to make friends when you first went to college? I'm 2 weeks in and I've never felt so lonely. Any advice would be appreciated. So first of all, this is really normal if you are struggling with homesickness. I was never homesick, and I still was like, I struggled for the first semester. I will tell you that it does get easier by second semester or quarter or whatever system you're on. But part of the reason that it gets easier, I think, is because people tend to have found what they want to do by then, or like where they want to spend the majority of their time. So I think the thing that you want to focus on right now is, I really hate that I'm going to do this. I walked by like a kind of hippie shop, and there was a sign outside that said, "Your vibe attracts your tribe." And I was so annoyed by how accurate I felt that was, because it rhymes, but it really is true. I mean, whatever you choose to do is going to draw people to you who's going to end up being your friends. So essentially, you want to, instead of focusing on making friends, focus on finding the thing that you want to spend your time in college doing. Do you want to join an a cappella group? Do you want to join a recreational, or not recreational, what's the word? You know, the sports, intramural sports team or something. If you want to volunteer, the thing about college and being in university is you are free to pursue your own interests. So try to pursue something that you like, and it doesn't necessarily have to be what you're studying. I actually highly recommend that it not be what you're studying. So for me, I was in a sorority, I was in an a cappella group. So this was a whole bunch of people who weren't working on the same stuff I was working on. So that when I got really frustrated with the people who were in my very small program, I had all these other people to sort of vent to. They were my outlet. They were especially good. My a cappella group was especially good for being a creative outlet. So think about something that you love to do just because you love to do it, and then pursue that. Student government, that's actually something that I wish I had done more of. I think I had actually too many things going on. Also, my second semester was when I approached my favorite professor and was like, "Hey, I really like what you do. I like what you're working on. Do you have anything I could help with?" And then I ended up being her research assistant, which is how I got onto sort of a fast track of being research assistant to teaching assistant. So I had a really good paying job in college, which was important to me because I was there on a scholarship. So yeah, basically, everyone is feeling the way that you're feeling. Everybody is lonely, and some people are going to cover it up better than others, but that doesn't mean that other people aren't feeling it. Other people are definitely wondering how they're going to make friends. Also, a lot of the people that you do end up meeting in, the first couple of weeks of college, don't see them again. I remember I started seeing this one guy like a week after I got to college, and then it just like, and then I just didn't see him again. I think he lived in my building, and I just didn't see him again. That was, you know, the first people you meet might not necessarily be the people who stick. So just don't stress out about it. Be cool. No, but actually, don't worry about being cool. Don't be cool. Don't try to pretend to be something you're not. College is not high school, okay? You don't have to secretly like things. The more open you are about what you like in college, the better, because that's how those people are going to find you. College is it's a big pond where you're finally allowed to do whatever you want. You can spend your time doing whatever. It's not that uncommon to have students in different majors pursuing stuff. I was in my university's orchestra for like 2 years, and I've said why that ended, and I'm not going to go into it now. But yeah, I wasn't a music major, and I still played in the orchestra. So I guess the point is, just think of it as filling your time. You don't want to have a lot of time just sort of staring at the ceiling, wondering how you're going to make friends. Don't like sit in your own misery, which I know is probably what you want to do, but definitely don't do that. College, and I said this to the person who was going abroad also, this is the time to say yes to things. If someone you don't know very well is like, hey, do you want to come to a party? I don't know, go to it. If they're like, hey, we're going to this event over here on campus, do you want to come? Just go. This is the opportunity you have to check things out, see who you might be attracted to and who might be attracted to you. I don't mean that in a sex way, but, you know, if it happens, it happens. So anyway, to recap, very normal what you're feeling. Get out there, fill your time with stuff. Go do stuff. Try not to be in your dorm room too often. Obviously study and stuff, but one thing that I wish I had understood about college is that this is the time when you get to meet a lot of people that are hard to meet in your professional life. So if I had known, for example, that I wanted to be a writer when I was in college, then I probably would have gone to a lot more like Q&A sessions or networking things that I wasn't really concerned with at the time. But you know, part of studying at a university is the people you have access to. So you want to meet people who are important in their field as well as, you know, people who are going to be your friends, because these are the people who are going to help you find a job later in life. These are going to be the people who help you connect to the industry you want to connect to. So don't think of college as just about learning one thing. It's not about getting a degree. It's also about meeting as many people as you can, because moving forward, you never know how useful those people are going to be. Oh, and my customary warning. So the problem with being really lonely is that when you go home for Thanksgiving break, you're almost certainly going to like hook up with a guy from high school. Do not date him, okay? This is so important. Do not date, seriously, whoever it is that you end up hooking up with over Thanksgiving break. It's like an inevitability. You can do it, just don't commit to them. I promise, because first semester to second semester, quarter, whatever, is a huge change. I don't know if it's just that like the energy after people come back from the winter holidays are just like more ready and they're just more amped to try new things, or like something about the spring is it's easy. I always got like better grades, better scores in the spring. I don't know what it is. Your energy is going to change, so just don't commit to anything. This is such a weird warning. I'm just going to move on. Dear Olivie, I have a dating-related question. I'm currently living in a country where marriage is seen as more of a business agreement than a union based on love, and I found myself interested in a guy who happens to be married. He pursued me pretty aggressively, in my opinion, and I found myself liking him before I found out he was taken. Now I don't know what to do. They don't have any kids, and he says he wants to keep seeing me, but I know I won't be able to only stay friends. Help. Okay, so there are fundamental laws of dating. There are things that are always true. And, you know, like, think of it like the laws of physics. And one of the fundamental laws of dating is he's never going to leave his wife, okay? And, like, this just applies all the time. It just never doesn't apply. Even in the rare cases where he does leave his wife, it's such an exception that it's just an anomaly. It's statistically insignificant. He's never going to leave his wife. Let's just open there. And okay, I have previously posed the question, that is it worth it to fall in love if it doesn't end somewhere? And I think that the answer can be yes, that if there is no long-term destination, it can sometimes still be worth it to have a connection with someone. It is super not worth it in this case. This is going to be a very short answer. Do not talk to this guy. Don't entertain this guy. First of all, he was married and he pursued you, okay? If he was willing to do that with you, he'll do it with other women. And maybe loyalty isn't as important to you as it is to me, and maybe loyalty is not the right word, but I don't want that. I don't want a guy who I rely on for whatever reason, even if it's not love. He still has a wife that he made promises to. She is still going to be a priority in his life. And they don't have kids yet, but that's kind of the purpose of marriage. As far as I can tell, the purpose of marriage in cultures where the marriage is contractual, children are expected. They are matched up for the purpose of reproducing. So he may not have kids yet, but eventually he'll have kids, and they should be his priority. If they are not his priority, if his wife and his children are not his priority, then he's not a good man, and you don't want to waste your time on him. And if they are his priority, then you're not. So you are kind of on the fast track to waste a lot of time. Maybe he's a great guy. I find it a little doubtful. His behaviors don't exactly give off great guy vibes. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what your situation is, but if you think you're gonna definitely catch feelings for him, then you absolutely need to stay away from this guy. I kind of hurt my back. It's not my back, it just feels like my back, but it's actually like my pelvis or something, but I don't want to say to you that I have injured my pelvis. That seems like a lot of questions would follow. Okay, I'm 23 and a virgin, and it isn't that I don't want to have sex, but also not like I do. I don't know what it is, but I feel that the whole world is too obsessed with it, or that there must be something wrong with me. I have a very exhausting fear of intimacy and vulnerability, and even alone, I can't orgasm, and it's exhausting. Okay. So I've said before that sex is a big part of life and relationships, not just in the having it, but in the wondering whether or not to have it. Not having sex is a decision, and it seems like maybe it's a decision that you want to make. It seems like maybe the only reason you want to have sex is to feel normal. Or to identify with the people around you, including me. I talk about sex a lot. But you don't need to be like me. You don't need to be like anyone. It's okay for you to say that sex is not an important part of your life and you're not going to pursue it. It's okay for you to decide you're not going to pursue it right now, or to decide you're not going to pursue it ever. It's really up to you. The reason I talk about sex so much is because I want to normalize one type of experience. I want to normalize the experience that I have and that a lot of women have that isn't really represented, which is that there are women who really do enjoy sex and sometimes enjoy sex more than their male partners. I have a tendency to speak out in representation, in advocacy, one might say, for that type of experience, but that is not the only experience. There are plenty of women who don't enjoy having sex, or who it's just not important to them, or they can take or leave it. I've said before that I think Mr. Blake is demisexual. I don't think that he can enjoy sex without feelings. I can't technically prove this because he allegedly has feelings for me, but he isn't really attracted to people very often. I can watch a movie and be like, oh my gosh, that character is so hot, and that actor is really attractive, and he's kind of like, are they? It just doesn't, sex does not register for him as frequently as it does for me, and that's perfectly fine. You just, in terms of relationships, you want to find someone who has the same, attitude towards sex that you have, or at least they can work with it. If you find that sex is just not, it's too stressful for you, it exhausts you, it takes too much of your emotional energy, and you don't want to invest a lot of your time in it, then you would want to find someone who's not me. It's fine if I'm taken, again, allegedly. The point is, this is something that you want to know about yourself, and there's nothing wrong with knowing that it's not important to you. You say, It isn't that I don't want to have sex, but also not like I do. So you're not straight up saying that you don't want to have it. It sounds like socially you're probably programmed to expect to have had it by now. But why be in a rush? I have said things that are not reflecting your experience. And hopefully that's fine, and hopefully you understand that just because I say something doesn't mean it's true universally. If I were you, I would just take sex off the table for a while and see if that relaxes you at all. Just don't worry about sex. Decide that it's not important to you right now. And if there are people who push that for you, that's maybe not someone you want to spend your time on right now. I just mostly want to reassure you that there are other people who have this experience. You are not alone. No one is alone, except for maybe the guy who actually leaves his wife, the anomaly. But there are people who have this experience. There are people who are going to relate to this experience. If you want to find someone for whom sex is not an important part of the relationship, you will find them. They exist. They might be hard to find, but the best way to find them is to be really open about this. So, if you find that you're dating someone and they push you sexually, just say, I'm not really interested in this. And then obviously, you have to be understanding. If they say, oh, well, sex is important to me and it's not for you, then you have that conversation. But I think you just need to take it off the table for now. For you, it's not important right now. So I think you need to remove it as an option and see if that relieves some of the pressure for you. Hopefully it does. I think that kind of what must be stressing you out is the feeling that maybe there's something wrong with you, that because everybody else seems to be obsessed with it and you're not, it can almost feel like I like to describe this sensation as you're at a circus, right? And you're like watching a circus. You're watching like a sword swallower, but everyone around you is like politely clapping like it's like a golf game. Sometimes I have that feeling of just incongruity, of just like what I'm seeing and what I'm feeling is absolutely not what anybody else seems to be feeling, and that can be very stressful. It can be like, why am I the only person who seems to feel this way, or who seems to be suffering this particular sensation? So I guess what I'm saying is you're not alone in the circus, okay? Other people see the circus too. They just maybe are not being very open about it. So you might have to make the decision to be the one who's making that choice, who's saying, sex is not an important part of my life. I don't want to be pressured into it. I find it stressful. I don't want to think about stress. Maybe romance, friendship, whatever. Maybe all that stuff comes first. Maybe it doesn't. That's up to you to decide. You don't have to feel like you're abnormal. There is no normal experience. It is okay for this to be your experience, and you don't have to make any apologies for it. There are plenty of people, and you'd be surprised by how many people have a similar attitude where sex is not a priority for them. They want other things first. They want their emotional needs met first. Or maybe once they have their emotional needs met and they feel they're with someone that they trust, then sex becomes part of the equation. And you might feel that way. You might feel that, okay, it's not important to you right now. It's stressful right now, probably because I imagine that if you tell people that at 23 you're a virgin, they're like, oh my God, what's wrong with you? Nothing's wrong with you. But I can see why you might feel that way. But maybe if you were in a relationship where you felt like your emotional needs were met and you felt like you trusted them and you thought, okay, I want to go further, then you can. But just take sex off the table for now and see if that changes your attitude on things. Hi, Olivie. Do you have any tips for finding a great therapist and what qualities to look for? I want someone who will listen and give me an objective perspective on some of my long-standing issues, but I'm not sure where to start. Okay, well, this can be tough, especially I can't really speak to the insurance, medical issues. I don't know where you are, how it works, where you live. It has also worked differently for me. In Chicago, basically every therapist took insurance, and in LA, basically no therapists do. So that can be tough. And I'm also assuming that you're not in college or at a university where you could just walk into the counseling center and ask to see someone. I'm assuming that you're an adult. So we're going to move forward based on that assumption. The way that I have found therapists in the past is by seeing like a primary care doctor. Initially, the way I found my therapist was after I got my diagnosis I was in law school at the time, so from the hospital of the university I went to, they recommended I made some calls. You basically get a list of people who are recommended in your area from a doctor, that you can find these resources probably online also. But I would ask your primary care doctor if they have a place that you should look, or if there's an insurance kind of situation, you can check to see who's covered by your insurance. So basically what happens is you end up getting like a short list of people who are near you, and you have to call them or email them to check for their availability. So for a lot of people, this is a very stressful first step. So just be aware that there is if you have phone call anxiety like I do, I don't know what it is about the phone. I don't like the phone. I'm perfectly fine in person, but the phone is so stressful. But yeah, so my first therapist, I called a therapist, a couple of therapists that were on a list that was given to me. The first person who called me back, I went to go see them for an intro session. He ended up being my therapist. In LA, it was actually more of a friend of a friend situation. There was a family counselor who was in one of Mr. Blake's TRX classes, and we were just chatting, and she told me that's what she did, and I was like, oh, I need a therapist in LA. And she's like, oh, I have a friend who's just getting started on her own. And that's how I found my current therapist. So some things. One thing you're definitely going to be asked is whether you prefer a male or a female therapist, and what you kind of want their age range to be. So initially, I wanted a male therapist. I wasn't very comfortable with women. So my first therapist was an older man, and I really liked him, but part of the problem with him is I have a little bit of daddy issues, and so I became a little bit reliant on his opinion. Like, I kind of needed his approval, and there was at one point in one of our sessions, he stopped me and he was like, do you treat me like a father figure? And I was like, oh no, I do. And looking back, that was maybe not great for where I was in life. Now I have a female therapist who is my age, essentially, and I come to a lot of like earth-shattering conclusions with her. It feels like I'm talking to a girlfriend, but she's really knowledgeable, she knows her stuff, and she's really good about following me. Our sessions are like, I start at point A, and I wander around, and I meander, and blah, 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 and I come back to the point, and she's really good about following my train of thought. So my point is, you might think you want something, and it might not end up being the case, but what's really important is that first intro session. Most therapists will not charge you for that like get to know you session. They're feeling out whether or not they can help you. Most therapists will probably take notes. They will probably take notes for the first few sessions and then stop taking them, which don't think of that as a stressful thing. Think of that as they're writing down details about you so that they can remember you when you come back, so they don't have to keep asking you to repeat things. They see you once a week, so sometimes they have to like put things in a file so they remember. Especially, you said you have some long-standing things. Don't be surprised if the therapist you go to see is taking notes for the first few sessions. Usually they will ask a little bit about yourself, what you do, what your family's like. And then they'll also ask what your goal for therapy is. So my first therapist, he asked me what my goal was, and I said, I don't have a goal. I want to be on medication, and they won't let me go on medication without a therapist. And he was like, all right, very chill. My second therapist, however many years later, she was like, what are your goals? And I said, I don't want to be on medication, and I'm pretty self-aware. I'm constantly sort of analyzing my behaviors, so it's not like I want to unlock puzzle pieces of myself. It's more like I want someone to keep an eye on me so that if I ever do need medication, there's someone who can objectively observe when something's gone wrong. When I would get manic, people wouldn't notice right away because I was kind of good about hiding it. So I needed someone to hold me accountable. So that's basically my goal with my current therapist. And she checks in every year or whatever. She's like, do you want to have any more long-standing goals? Is there anything long-term we want to work on? And I always say no. For me, there's no long-standing problem. It's more like I just need to make sure that I'm okay from week to week. And so that's what our relationship is like. So for you, your therapist would say, what are your goals? And you would say, I've got some complex things that I'm going to need to work out over time. So for me, I was basically signing up for the long haul. I was like, I need a therapist who's just going to be there every week and there's no end date. But for you, you might say like, okay, I want to work on this for a few months or whatever. Sometimes with people who are just coming out of a relationship or they've just changed jobs, they might want to do therapy for a short term. Or like if you just started college and you're feeling really lonely, you might want to just do a couple of sessions just to like check in. So that's one thing to keep in mind. That's something they're going to ask you. That's something they're going to gauge. Is like, what is this relationship going to be? They get a feel for you. And you should also get a feel for them. If you don't feel comfortable talking to them, it is okay to say, okay, I'm sorry, you're not the therapist for me. I've also heard, actually, my best friend is also a therapist, and I've heard him say that he'll sometimes have a session with someone and say, I'm not the right therapist for you. And it's not an insult to them. It's nothing other than a chemistry thing. It's just like, I am not the best person to help you, but I know someone who is usually what they'll say if that's the case. My best friend is kind of a lighthearted sort of dude. He likes to make jokes. He's very like, he's comforting and warm, but he also has a tendency, he can do the tough love thing, or he can do so therapists have different like styles. My first therapist, his method was to basically just say nothing. He would just sit there in silence and I would just blurt something out and then we'd work through it. Versus my current therapist, she asks me a lot more questions and she makes it a lot more conversational. So people have different styles. You should decide if you like their style, which you can probably pick up on from that first hour. And then they're also deciding if their style is going to work for you. So like I said, my best friend was like, my style, not going to work for you. You're going to need someone with a different, I think he ended up recommending a woman for them. So I know that that's not really helpful to finding one, but that should help you sort of figure out what you're getting into. Because you might have to do this intro session more than once, just depending on how quickly you find someone who fits what you're looking for. But just like how people have different ways of being friends. People have different ways of being a therapist. You might respond to one thing more than another. My first therapist, I had a terrible tendency to lie to him. It can be a little bit difficult for me to be honest if I feel like lying would get me a better result. And so because this therapist was a father figure and I do sort of have issues with trying to please father figures in my life, I would lie and give him the answer he wanted to hear because I knew what it was. So like it was just not a very good situation, that had nothing to do with him. He was a perfectly good therapist, but I never lied to my current therapist. I know it would be pointless, and she is very matter of fact. She's actually, I've described her as a marshmallow princess. She's much more sentimental than I am. And it really is just kind of like bouncing off each other and kind of working through things. And she's also really good about telling me that she's proud of me, which is something that I never realized I was missing before. I probably should have known given the daddy problems, but you can either know what you want and look for that, or you can be a little open to the possibility of something that might work for you that you didn't think it would and you want to give it a try, like I did. But yeah, the initial stages are pretty annoying. It's emailing for availability and stuff. I always tell people that first session can be a little bit exhausting. The talking about your life and thinking about it, I've heard some people say that it gives them like a sweat, like it's almost like physical exertion, just the talking about their feelings so much, or like revealing things to essentially a stranger can be draining. For me, when I talk about my emotions, I always have to pee. So yeah, I always get out of therapy and I'm like, oh God, I have to go to the bathroom. People have these reactions. Some people don't, but I like to warn people that in case you do have that reaction, it's super normal. It happens a lot. And I think that you're right, someone having an objective, well, you want someone who has an objective point of view. So you definitely don't want a therapist who inserts themselves. That's something that you might want to look out for. It's very uncommon. I mean, they are taught right from the start not to do that. Yeah, actually, my best friend, as I said, he does this great thing now where he's like, oh gosh, I'm sorry, I'm self-inserting. And I'm like, I'm not your client. Please self-insert. I'm talking to you. But anyway, he does great work. I'm so proud of him. that's an aside. I'm just really proud of him. He does a lot of good in the world. Anyway, I think that about covers that. I think we might be done. I guess I don't really have anything else to say. So I've been a little bit stressed lately. I've got the eye thing going on, and then I've got a little bit of acne on my jawline. Ugh, which is apparently like stress and hormone related. Cool, just what I wanted. So anyway, this has been me, Olivie Blake, not writing, and I'll see you next week.